When I make him an offer, he can't refuse.
Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut.
They're watching us from the window. You see them?
They kill children and women.
This is a story about a secret brotherhood, a shadowy empire built on money and the relentless hunger to make more of it.
You would need to be fully blooded Italian. Your bloodline needs to be all Italian.
It's a tale of men who seized every opportunity, who stepped into power the moment others looked away. It's the story of Cosa Nostra, the OG Mafia. It's a saga rooted in the past, yet still very much alive in the present.
The Mafia is still present here. They're still here.
They were worried if we were police or maybe journalists.
They killed him because of that.
Welcome to Sicily. Have you heard of an ancient Sicilian ceremony called Laponut? No? Well, this is the beginning of our Mafia story. Laponut, or the pricking, is an Italian Mafia initiation ceremony where a new member's finger is pricked and with his blood he signs a holy card. And this symbolizes his commitment to a new family, the mob. This is footage of a real-life Mafia meetup filmed by Italian police in 2004. The talking is a new recruit reciting an oath of loyalty to his new bosses and colleagues.
Giuro di essere fedele a Cosa Nostra. Possa la mia carne bruciare come questo santino se non manterrò fede al giuramento.
The ritual symbolizes that if you betray the organization, you end up like the saint in the picture, burned. By far, the most striking part of this footage is at the end of the ceremony, the guy is asked to renounce everything he knew up to this point. He's then asked to keep one bullet in his gun at all times, and this is to use on himself if he messes up. Whispered allegations and rumours have always connected real-life figures to the Mafia. Happens all the time. It's important to stress at this time that none of this has been proven. This is purely anecdotal. But for me, the evidence speaks for itself. Interestingly, and quite alarmingly, there are plenty of US presidents on this list, most notably the guy currently sat in the White House, Donald Trump. And actually, this isn't something that Trump's ever tried to deny. In fact, he's done the opposite. He's confirmed it publicly.
Have you ever knowingly done business with what I like to call organized crime?
I have met on occasion a few of those people. They happen to be very nice people. You just don't want to owe them money.
Yeah.
There's this book, Wise Guys and the White House, Gangsters, Presidents and the Deals They Made. And in it, there's a whole chapter dedicated to Trump. There's a section in the book that claims back when Trump was just a property guy, he would pay over the odds for land owned by gangsters. Say what you will about Trump, but he's no fool. He's paying them more money than the land is worth so that when it comes to construction down the line, the unions who are controlled by the mob don't cause him any problems. There's one instance. Trump buys a pretty average, undesirable piece of land worth $195,000, but he pays $1.1 million for it. And there are other reports that Trump hired mobbed-up firms to build Trump Tower in Manhattan. Again, this included paying over the odds for concrete from a company controlled by Mafia bosses Fat Tony Salerno and Big Paulie Castanello. And there's even a story going around that Trump hired a Mafia drug trafficker as the head of his personal helicopter service in the 1980s. But this behaviour goes back way earlier than Trump. Harry Truman, heroic US president, is said to owe the early success of his political career to the Kansas mob. The book's author believes he wouldn't have been elected US president without their help. And even the clean-cut JFK supposedly leaned on Sicilian-American mafia boss Sam Giancana to secure votes for him in the 1960 presidential election. We all knew the tentacles of the mafia reach far and wide, but were you expecting them to reach into the White House? And over in Italy, former PM Silvio Berlusconi's career was full of investigations and allegations of mafia association. This stuff was in the Italian papers every week. Berlusconi was never convicted. Every allegation seemed to bounce off him, but his close friend and advisor, a guy called Marcello Dell'Utri, was. This guy, Dell'Utri, spent 4 years in prison for acting as a mediator between Berlusconi's business interests and Cosa Nostra. So what's the common thread here? Power. Believe it or not, the mafia earned a chunk of its influence from lemons, or more specifically the citrus industry, but it all begins with lemons. Way back in the 1860s, Sicily was joining up with the rest of Italy. The island had just been conquered by a guy called Garibaldi, who'd invaded Sicily with 1,000 men from the mainland. And General Garibaldi was so successful that a year later, an Englishman named a biscuit after him. Anyway, these huge changes in Italian society meant that loads of new land was up for grabs. And thanks to a disease called scurvy, Sicily's citrus plantations were booming. People all over the world were desperate to get their hands on Sicily's citrus fruits. It was a crazy, mostly lawless time, and no one trusted the authorities. So plantation landowners, now suddenly flush with cash, hired local men of honor to guard their properties. And these guys were the early mafia, secret clubs and organizations who took advantage of the weak laws. Their main business was selling protection, mostly from themselves. Basically, these guys would say, pay us or we'll be the problem you need protecting from. And so off the back of increased demand for Sicily's lemons, these gangs got richer, they got stronger, and they became incredibly influential. So what happens to these dishonorable men of honor? Strangely enough, the most famous Sicilian mafia groups of all aren't even in Sicily anymore. They packed their bags a long time ago and set off for a faraway land called New York. You've probably heard of it. These are the 5 families, and they've dominated organized crime in New York City from the 1930s through to the present day. We're talking about the Gambinos, the Genevese, the Bonanno, Colombo and Lucchese crime families, each with their own storied history. I want to show you guys how these groups are structured, because they've got much more in common with a business than they have a traditional family. As you'd expect, at the top, there's the boss, the Don. This guy takes responsibility for all the important decisions. Think of him as the CEO. Below him, there are a couple of underbosses, his second in command. And somewhere in between the top 2, there's this guy called the consigliere. He's a trusted friend and advisor to the top guy. And this is where it starts to sound like the military, because below that you've got the capos or captains, and they're each in charge of a group of soldiers. And at this level, it's the soldiers who are involved in the dirty work. So they're running gambling rings or trafficking drugs. And if there's violent acts, they're the ones involved in it. What's most important about this hierarchy is that the guys at the top get to keep their hands clean and rake in the profits, whereas the guys at the bottom, the soldiers and the associates, are working to one day in the future share in the rewards. So, back to the families. The Genevese family, they were the oldest and the largest of the 5, often referred to as the Ivy League of the underworld. The Geneveses were shaped by bosses Lucky Luciano and Vito Genovese, and they built up huge influence in areas like construction, gambling, racketeering and unions. And they were famously sophisticated, which was another way of saying they could get other families to take the heat for their crimes. And on the whole, they would avoid any kind of public flashy displays of violence or ego, which could not at all be said for the Gambino family. They were at the other end of the ego scale altogether. They were led by this guy called John Gotti, the dapper Don, and they weren't at all shy or discreet. Gotti was known for an expensive taste in suits and was always happy speaking to the press. This guy seized power in 1985 by murdering then boss Big Paulie Castanello, mostly out of fear that Big Paulie was about to have him whacked. Can't believe I just said whacked. The Lucchese crime family were probably the most profitable of all the families. Wait, that's not the Lucchese crime. That's the cast of Goodfellas. Okay, the Lucchese's, the film was loosely based on the Lucchese crime family. Henry Hill was a real-life associate of the Lucchese crime family. And you remember that scene from Goodfellas where they steal $500,000 from an airline? Well, that happened. That was real. That was the Lucchese crime family. These guys focused on subtle influence and soft power. So they cultivated relationships and connections with judges and politicians. The Bonanos. Their legacy is much less glamorous. The family was run by a wise guy called Joe Bananas Bonanno, and they were the subject of the most notorious and successful undercover FBI operation in Mafia history. Agent Joseph Pistone, aka Donnie Brasco, Johnny Depp to you and me, infiltrated their ranks from 1976 through to 1981. And as punishment for the shame and embarrassment they brought to the five families, they were kicked out of the Mafia Commission, this kind of overseeing union run by the families. And that wasn't even the worst of it. Later, new boss Joseph Messino brought even greater shame on the family when he was discovered to be the first ever sitting boss of a New York crime family to be a government informant. Literally a dirty rat. He said he did it to avoid the death penalty. And lastly, the Colombo crime family. These guys were the youngest and arguably the weakest of the five. They included people with names like Crazy Joe Gallo or Arthur the Animal or Frank Bo Peep Ternillo. Sounds scary. Unlike the other families, the Colombos have been almost overcome by internal wars and fighting all throughout their history. But interestingly, family boss Joe Colombo was the first American-born boss of a New York crime family. Not only was he a proud guy, but he was known to be persuasive. Colombo convinced the producers of the Godfather film to remove any reference to the words Mafia and Cosa Nostra from the finished film. I don't know how, but he also got the producers to agree to only portray Italian Americans in a good light. No doubt, Sicilian Mafia only truly becomes world famous when they leave the shores of Sicily. But actually, the true Mafia story lies in the quiet villages and the hidden alliances it left behind. Okay, for the next part of the story, I'm on the ground. In Sicily.
I'm actually on my way now to meet our co-host. There's a guy called Valerio. Valerio!
Hello, guys.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Nice to meet you, pal. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Very good.
Valerio, how careful do you think we have to be about using that M-word out in public?
Actually, I think that we have to be careful because Mafia is still a big shadow over the city and the society, and mostly here in Palermo.
Great, sounds exciting.
The first place on our list is a tiny rural town called Corleone. This place is steeped in Mafia history. The Corleonesi were led by two guys who would go on to be remembered in Mafia folklore. The first was a guy called Luciano Leggio, and he was followed by a guy called Salvatore Rina. Remember the name. These guys were ruthless, the likes of never seen before, which is telling for an organisation which goes by the name the Mafia. Between them, they orchestrated the deadly Mafia war. And this was a war. The authorities were the enemy. Prosecutors, judges, police chiefs, and politicians were all murdered. They killed rival bosses, mafiosi within their own ranks, members of the public and journalists. And it was all done very, very publicly. The idea behind it was fear. No one was safe. The Mafia had the power. Rina earns himself the nickname The Beast for his brutality. And his strategy pushes the Mafia into full-scale war with the Italian government. led by Rina, the Corleonesi had taken full control of the Sicilian mafia, and he became the boss of bosses. And all of this, the carnage and brutality, the murders, the executions and car bombs, the utter dominance of the whole island, were all achieved from here? From quiet and sleepy Corleone?
I think when you're trying to make a film about mafia history, it would be a crime to not come to Corleone. And it's not quite what I imagined. Very rural, very minimalist.
Pretty square.
Yeah, it's still nice.
Very normal.
I just wonder if everyone is disappointed in that sense like we are.
Yeah,
Like there's nothing to see that relates to the film, is there?
Do you think that there's still the mafia right here in Corleone, or there's no more?
Allora, not like before, you know? Now, as in Corleone, resisted the mentality of the mafia. Now the mafia stay in the institution, in the government. Don't kill the people like before, but kill the idea, and that's another big problem.
To understand the mafia's immortality, not only here in Sicily, but also wherever you happen to be watching this video from, we need to consider their place in pop culture. The mafia, while very much real, has been romanticized on screens across the world for what seems like forever. For example, the 10 most successful mafia movies have earned over $2 billion combined at the box office.
So what's your favorite line from a mafia?
Favorite line, I think the Joe Pesci one during the Goodfellas, when he says, funny. Funny how?
Funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you?
Funny because I make you laugh.
What do you mean funny? Funny how? How am I funny?
And I love that part. Then I saw it dubbed in Italian with the Sicilian accent.
Okay.
So, buffo. Buffo come? Buffo perché ti faccio ridere. Buffo perché sono un clown. More or less, this is the, it's a clown, un pagliaccio.
How the fuck am I funny? What the fuck is so funny about me?
The mafia was the Sicilian mafia, wasn't it? This is the first mafia.
The proper word comes from the Sicilian mafioso, that means boldness or bravado.
Okay.
Then from this word it spread out to all around the world, thanks to the movies, Il Padrino, The Godfather, or Goodfellas. And now, every time that we talk about a criminal organization, we say mafia, mafia, mafia.
When you say the mafia should be Sicilian mafia.
And then in The Godfather, you see a lot of luxury, you know?
Yes.
Also, no? Right here, the people, like Totorino, Provenzano, they were very simple people. Simple people. They came from, like, the countryside.
Yeah.
There's nothing here. Corleone is empty, no flash, nothing, no show. No, right? Everything in the movie is about the show.
Yeah.
And also the look of the main characters in the movie is the look of the people in Italy in the 70s, 80s. Nowadays, no more people dress like that.
Yeah.
But I have to say that this style is really cool.
It
like
is.
The hair back, like the good dressers.
Yeah.
And culturally, we've learned so many of our social behaviours from the mafia. Things like kids knowing from a young age not to snitch originates from criminal codes and underworld slang, where snitching relates to omerta and the code of silence.
Snitches get stitches.
Other things like the power of reputation, meaning a good name is a man's most trustworthy quality. Or the idea that a strong sense of belonging, nothing being more important than family, comes from the same place. Okay, at this point you're probably wondering, but what about the mafia today?
It's hard for me because it's my city. If you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, very bad things can happen.
Well, this is Eleanor. She grew up in Palermo and has agreed to show us around a shady neighborhood.
How is it linked with the mafia, this place?
When people don't have a job, they work for mafia because mafia works as an employer, like the biggest employer that you can have in Italy, probably. So a lot of people here, you know, they are criminals just because they were born in such a condition where to be a criminal is necessary for living. See, the problem here is that you never know who is looking. And when there are cameras, you know, people are not very happy because, I mean, if there is like drug smuggling or something is happening, yeah, people will throw stones at us from the windows. They're watching us from the window. You see them? Steven, can we go?
Back in the 60s and 70s, the beach in Speroni was the place to be. We're talking chic cool, full of the city's beautiful and best, showing off their swimsuits and suntans. But the Mafia had other plans. They'd spent a ton of money on a beach up the road called Mondello, and they didn't want Speroni stealing the spotlight. So what do? They wreck it on purpose. They make sure Speroni isn't as nice, so more people go to their beach. And after that, it becomes the Mafia's messy backyard. They dump all of their construction junk here in Speroni. Rubbish, concrete, God knows what else. And it made the water so dirty that the authorities banned anyone from swimming there. Go in and your legs might realistically dissolve.
It's just been left to die. Ellen has also suggested the Mafia still have influence and power and control over the officials that would give a license to businesses or to someone to bring this place back to life. So, I mean, again, just tells you how current this thing is, how much of a current issue Mafia is in this city.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the paradox, which is protection money, or what they call in Sicily, pizzo. Pizzo has always been one of the most direct ways the Mafia makes money. The literal translation of pizzo is to pinch.
It's when the mobsters want the boss' money.
They ask for the pizzo. You have to pay before a certain date.
If you don't, they kill you.
They kill.
They kill children and women.
So if you happen to run a tourist or a small tobacco shop, a couple of guys might come round every couple of months and ask for 500 euros. If you happen to run a busy restaurant or a car dealership, your bill is going to be closer to 3,000 euros. And if you're a real estate agent selling expensive coastal properties, you can expect to cough up 5,000 euros every few months. You're paying for protection, and if you don't, they smash your windows, they break your legs, or worse.
In 2003, 70% of the shops in Sicily was paying pizzo. In Palermo, which is the biggest town, even 80%.
Wow.
Which means 8 out of 10 of the shops are paying pizzo. The last guy who spoke about this in the 90s was killed by the Mafia. It was a shopkeeper called Libero Grassi. He was killed actually 29 August 1991, so the anniversary is
So he refused to pay.
He refused to pay. He actually wrote a letter to the newspaper to say, Dear Mafia guy, I don't want to give you any money because my money is coming from my shop. I cannot give you any part of my shop because my shop is my life. If I do that, I'm gonna lose my freedom and my dignity.
They killed him because of that? Because
Yeah, they killed him. The Mafia is still present here. The difference, like in the past, is that now it's totally kind of invisible. They try to go underground, but they're still here. They don't create problems or trouble. It's the opposite. They solve issues, they solve problems. It's like during COVID, for instance, it was really bad in Italy. And, you know, the government said, stay home, don't go out and work, we give you money instead. But, you know, it's Italy, so a lot of bureaucracy, some money didn't arrive, a lot of families didn't get any money. And families were suffering, especially in Sicily. You know what the Mafia did instead? They were bringing food and groceries to the family to say, the government has promised you money. Money is not coming. In the meantime, you can rely on us.
So if many of the day-to-day reminders of the Mafia are starting to disappear, what remains? Well, actually, quite a lot.
This is where we're going now. This place is called Pizzosella. And we're going to try and get into some of these abandoned properties up here.
This is an area outside Palermo where the Mafia built loads of luxury mansions. Locals call it the Hills of Shame. It was the 60s and 70s, and the Mafia felt they could do pretty much whatever they wanted. the Mafia tore down beautiful green hills and fancy old homes to build 170 villas on the side of a mountain without even so much as thinking about asking for permission.
They're all just shells. It's like they got maybe a third of the way into the building process, just stopped. Okay. Good technique, mate. I like that.
Yeah. What an athlete.
Lost my way. Bathroom. An attempt at a shower was put in. Some of the art is really good. Some of it is just plain strange. But these ones, look at that. It's chimp. God knows what that is. How many bedrooms do we think?
5 bedrooms.
5 bedrooms.
Studio, and a big kitchen, and another kitchen on the other level.
I mean, do you not look at it and think it's a project?
Yeah. Maybe we can come living here. Yeah.
This is what we call a doer-upper.
It's a shame for a beautiful city like Palermo, I will say. You can see the mark of the Mafia here because it's something without any sense, just people building wherever they want, whenever they want, in every possible way without respecting the legality and the rights of the common people.
The Hills of Shame are a reminder of how Sicily's reputation has been battered for generations by the Mafia. And that reputation is the concrete this land was built upon, the story the world thinks it knows. And in many ways, the Mafia has become Sicily's most infamous export, outshining even the lemons. And yet, we're all complicit. We romanticize the myth, we devour the films, whether they're true or not. We're dazzled by the criminal ingenuity, drawn in by the headlines and dazzled by the bomb plots and betrayal. Yet today, the Mafia's grip isn't what it once was. But its legend? That still clings to Sicily and to us. It lives in our imagination and in the secret corners of our hearts. And I'm afraid I can't tell if that's a good thing or not.